What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith, and welcome to the Nerdy Narrative. This is a channel where I like to talk about all sorts of bookish related things, primarily in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror genres, but I do explore the other genres as well. In today's episode of Bookish Related Fun, I am going to share with you my February wrap-up. I'm just going to briefly share with you all of the things that I read and what rating that I gave it. Let's start with manga. I read the first 10 issues of Ouran High School Host Club. This is a buddy read that I was doing with Una from the Codex Cantina. I can't speak for Una, but for me, this is probably my least favorite manga I've read to date. Not that I'm not liking it. I definitely found that it grew on me the deeper I got into the series, but even so, it's not one that I found myself excited to pick up. In fact, we started a new comic series that I am way more excited about. As a result, I am pausing on this series for now. My library has it, so I can get it again at any time. I would like to finish it. I just have things I'm more excited about right now. Over the 10 volumes that I read, this averaged out to be around a 3-star read for me. For the month of February, I read 4 short stories. 2 of these were by Clarice Lispector from her collection. The first story that I read by her was In Search of a Dignity. It was about a 70-year-old woman who I felt was struggling with perhaps the onset of dementia or possibly Alzheimer's, and just her thought processes through a time period in her life. That story just got me in the feels. I really had an emotional attachment to that story. It reminded of someone that was very special to me back home. So I really loved that story. The second story that I read by her was The Message, and that story was just simply about teenage angst and them thinking they don't need anyone else, they don't need any adult telling them what to do, and then ultimately realizing that they do. So I very much enjoyed that one, especially the ending. The third story that I read was Agnes Stillwater Day by my author friend Bart J. Gilbertson. This story was a delight. It was just a cozy read. It was just like a bowl of homemade chicken noodle soup. At the end, it gets you. So it has a very important message. I just cannot tell you what it is. It will take away from the experience. It's on Amazon. You can pick it up. I think I got it for 99 cents. It is worth the read. I think it's one of those that everybody could benefit from reading. The fourth short story that I read was from the collection Sed de Sangre by V. Castro. And I read the first one in that collection, A Carnival of Gore. It is an erotic horror story, so just know that going in. I was not aware, and it was quite hilarious. It gave me a feel for the author and her writing style, which I really enjoyed. So I will be finishing that collection in March, and we'll give you guys an update on what I think of the whole collection as a whole. But I really enjoyed the first one. I would have loved to have had an actual novel about it, not for the erotic stuff, so to speak, but for the actual story. The situation and the take on vampires that she gave me, I really liked. I love vampires, guys. So the first book that I completed in February was The Gunslinger by Stephen King, the first book in the Dark Tower series. I have started my journey down the path to the Dark Tower. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars purely for enjoyment. This book had me thinking. It had me asking so many questions. I was so curious as to what this setup was for, and it just had me thinking for days and weeks after I put it down. The possibilities and just predictions of where I thought this story was going to go. I've had so many fun conversations with my friends about it. When a book just gets me engaged and actively thinking about it for that long after I've put it down, that just really adds to my level of enjoyment. The writing style was okay. I mean, it didn't blow my skirt up or anything like that, but there wasn't anything wrong with it. It was strictly the story itself and the questions it raised, and just how it just had my imagination kicked into overdrive as to where this is going. I cannot wait to continue this journey. But yes, 4-star. This one definitely belongs on your shelf. The next book I read is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is my favorite classic of all time. Not only that, it's definitely going to go in my top 10. This is a book I'm going to read so many times for the years to come. In fact, it's definitely going to be an annual reread, but it's just a story that every time you touch it, you just want to be in it. You want to read it again. I just cannot begin to go over how beautiful this story is. It's so important. It was published in 1937, but in my opinion, it is still just as relevant today. I have filmed a gush review on this one. I just haven't finished editing it and putting it up on the channel. So I won't go into any further detail with you here. Be looking for that. 5 stars. Just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. So next up, I read Shelter for the Damned by Mike Thorne. So I do have a spoiler-free review that will be going up about this one as well. So again, I won't go into too much detail. This one to me was a sort of teenage coming-of-age horror story. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was a 3-star read for me, which still means it's a good book. I loved the author's conversational writing style, so I am definitely looking forward into reading more of his work. This one for me personally had a whole lot of potential that it just didn't quite meet. The potential for greatness this one had, I just didn't feel like it got realized fully, so that did factor into my reading enjoyment a little bit and brought it to a 3-star. But again, 3 stars is not bad, guys. That's a good book. Again, that review should be up pretty soon, so keep your eyes out for it if you would like to know more. I also read the conclusion to the Patience of a Dead Man trilogy. Anger is an Acid by Michael Clark was a buddy read with Nikki from Dark Between Pages and Brad Proctor from the channel Brad Proctor. Guys, this was a fantastic conclusion to this trilogy. It wasn't the ending that I thought we were going to get. It wasn't the ending that I wanted, actually, but it was a good ending. Like, I can't be mad when it's not what I wanted if it's still a good ending. This is my favorite haunted house story ever. I gave this one 5 stars. I'm sure that is no surprise to anyone. This trilogy is my favorite haunted house trilogy in existence. It's going to be hard to usurp this one. It is not my favorite in the trilogy. I still think the first book is my favorite. Just the level of fear that one evoked in me is just unmatched. Absolutely unmatched. That is not to say I didn't have some heart-pounding moments in this one, because that familiar fear from the first one was definitely revisited in this book. So yes, 5 stars. If you have not read Patience of a Dead Man and you love haunted house stories, you have got to get on this trilogy. You can get the 3 single issues, or he does have a bind up that's got all 3 of them in one. So we're just on the 5-star train for the rest of this video. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys. The next book that I read is A Time of Dread, which is the first book in the Of Blood and Bone trilogy by John Gwynne. This is our second series by John Gwynne that takes place in the Blasted Lands. This story takes place 100 years after the Faithful and the Fallen series. I was a little scared because I didn't think I was going to be able to be in the Blasted Lands without my beloved characters from the Faithful and the Fallen. John Gwynne wrote such amazing characters for that world. I should have trusted him. I should have trusted that he was going to write more characters for me to love, and he absolutely did. One thing a lot of people struggle with the Faithful and the Fallen was the huge cast of characters. This time, it's a very small group, or at least in the first book. I still have the other 2 to read. But there's a much smaller group of characters that we follow. You know, I think that's going to make a lot of folks happier to have that smaller group. This was a buddy read for me as well. I read this with Abby from Abby Salter and Ina, and we just absolutely had the best time with this one. I cannot wait to continue this series. I'm struggling because I don't know when I'm going to get to the other 2, but I hope that it's very soon. But yes, 5 stars all the way. My next 5-star read fell into the science fiction genre with Pierce Brown's Red Rising. What a fantastic series so far. A lot of folks didn't care for this first book. They fell in love with the series with the second book. I'm already in love, so I can't imagine what book 2 is going to hold for me. But this book, I was absolutely invested in, ready to binge by chapter 3. I loved the story. Everybody compares it to Hunger Games. I can see where they get that, but I also see where it was very different from the Hunger Games. Very, very different. Everybody's saying Hunger Games, and I'm over here saying Darrow just wants to dance. Let that boy dance, y'all. Let that boy dance. I enjoyed this one very much. I flew through it. The whole series is a read-along hosted by the Library of Alexandria. I was very excited to be asked by Alan to be in the live stream talking about this book. Along with Alan, the other 2 channels that were part of that live stream were Christy Lewis and Ponderings of Pete. I'm going to have everybody linked below, plus the live stream if you want to check it out. It is spoiler-filled, so don't watch it if you haven't read this book yet. But this book was amazing. And then my final 5-star read, we are back into the fantasy category with The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, the first book in the First Law trilogy. So funny story, this wasn't even part of my February TBR. It was on my list to read eventually, but I want to give away from the channel Steve Talks Books and Stuff. He and Yolene Reads were doing a read along for the First Law, and so I hopped right in. I loved this book. Love this book. I love the characters in this book so very much, which is great. It's great that I love the characters because there wasn't any plot, really. Not anything that I could really sink my teeth into. I'm sure that's going to come into play in the second book, which I am going to read in March. But The Blade Itself, I fell in love on the first page. The first page. Chapter 1, first page, we meet Logan. Logan Nine Fingers, the Bloody Nine. Literally, the first word out of his mouth is shit. And I was like, well, I'm in. I don't know why it struck a chord in me the way that it did. I was instantly hooked. I was smiling or chuckling on every page. I loved this book. The majority of my experience was through the audiobook, which was narrated by Stephen Pacey. That guy is a genius. I will listen to him read the yellow pages to me. He is fascinating. Every character had a different voice. Oh man, and just the way he brought that story to life was epic. My friend Penny gave me some tips and tricks on how to listen and read at the same time in the physical book, and it just really was a fantastic experience. I'm looking forward to just honing that skill a little bit because I'm still not quite able to listen at the same speed as my eyes want to move, but I'm working on it. So I can't wait to continue that trilogy. The first 10 issues of Nailbiter, which is an American creator-owned comic series. I loved that series. I loved what I've read so far. I binged the first 10 back to back in one sitting. Cannot wait to finish. I will finish that series in March. I'm buddy reading it with Una from the Codex Cantina, and man, we just cannot stop gushing over this comic to one another. It's fantastic. It's a horror comic, but it really has more of a feel of a true crime, all about serial killers. We've got some agents investigating. The best part is you think, oh, it's about these 16 serial killers from Buckaroo, Oregon. No, really it starts off focused on a mystery, a missing person, and we just have the interesting serial killers or their families or friends from this town just kind of in the background at first. I can't wait to see where that one goes. But as far as those first 10 issues, 5 stars all the way. Loved it. Probably going to find whatever I can by Joshua Williamson and keep going through his work. And that will take care of everything that I read in the month of February. As you can see from my ratings, I had a stellar reading month. I'm just on a reading high right now. I read so many good things, so many new things, so many new to me authors. I'm just overwhelmed with how awesome of a time I had reading. And then of course I'm riding that high straight into March because almost everybody that I talked to you about in this video, I'm reading more of in March. In fact, I put every book Joe Abercrombie ever wrote on my wish list because I am going to read all of his stuff. Absolutely cannot wait. But enough about me. What did you guys read in February? What was your favorite read? What was your least favorite read? Let me know in the comments down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to see what is going on in my little corner of the world. I hope your morning has gotten off to a great start. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely amazing. I'll see you soon.